So India is going all in on green energy, right? We're seeing solar panels and wind turbines pop up everywhere. But underneath all of this incredible progress, there's this huge catch, a fundamental problem that could pretty much stop this whole green revolution in its tracks. I mean, just think about it for a second. Solar panels work great during the day, and wind turbines are fantastic when it's windy. But what happens when the sun goes down or when the wind just stops?
Yep, that's the big one. How do we power our homes, our cities, and our entire economy through the night? This is the core of the problem we're digging into today, India's massive energy storage challenge.
You can think of energy storage as the final, crucial piece of India's renewable puzzle. Without a good way to save that clean power for later, we're stuck with a pretty terrible choice. Either we risk blackouts, or we have to fire up those old, expensive, and polluting power plants every single night.
So, what's the game plan? Well, India is basically looking at three main contenders: batteries, a classic technology called pumped hydro, and the new kid on the block, green hydrogen. Let's break them down and see how they really stack up.
All right, let's kick things off with the one we all kind of get, the battery. They're in our phones, our laptops, our scooters. Now, just imagine that exact same idea, but scaled up to a truly massive city powering size. That's what we're talking about here.
You know, probably the best way to picture it is like a portable tiffin box for energy. You use all that cheap, abundant solar power during the day to pack it completely full. And then, come evening, you've got a ready-to-eat meal of electricity waiting for you.
The way it works is actually pretty neat. When solar panels are making more power than we need, that extra electricity is used to create a chemical reaction inside the battery. Then, when we need the power back, the reaction just reverses itself, releasing all that stored electricity back onto the grid. Okay, but here's the reality check for India. First, these things are expensive, and guess who ends up paying for that? We do, on our electricity bills. Second, we're almost totally dependent on imports for the key ingredients like lithium and cobalt from places like China, and unlike a good old steel tiffin box, these batteries don't last forever, which means we've got a huge e-waste headache to deal with down the line.
So if batteries are the shiny new tech, what about something more old school? Something India has been successfully using for decades? Well, that brings us to option number 2, pumped hydro.
And you can think of this one just like a savings account for energy. Seriously. When you have extra cash, or in this case, extra electricity, you make a deposit. When you need it, you make a withdrawal. The only real difference is that instead of money, we're using water and the power of gravity.
So, check this out. Imagine you have two big reservoirs, one up high on a hill and one down below. When there's a ton of cheap solar power during the day, you use it to pump water from the bottom reservoir to the top one. You're literally storing energy in that raised water. Then, at night, when demand peaks, you just open a valve, let the water rush back down through a turbine, and boom, you're generating electricity. It's just simple, brilliant physics.
And look, this isn't some futuristic idea. This is real, and it's working in India right now. We've already got about 4,700 megawatts of this stuff up and running. It's a mature, reliable technology that we know how to build and operate.
But of course, it's not perfect. There are some big trade-offs. On the plus side, these plants are absolute workhorses. They last for 40, even 50 years, and can store huge amounts of energy very cheaply. The downside? Well, you can't just build them anywhere. You need very specific, hilly geography, and they take up a ton of land and water, which often raises some pretty serious environmental and social issues.
Okay, and that brings us to our final option, the one everyone's talking about, green hydrogen. This is the futuristic contender, the one that many people see as a potential game changer, especially for heavy industry. For this one, think of it like a gas cylinder of energy. That's the core idea. You can produce it, you can store it for a really long time, and then you can transport it wherever you need power. That kind of flexibility is a huge deal. So what makes it green? Well, it's all about how it's made. You take water, H2O, and you use clean, renewable electricity, say from a solar farm, to zap it and split it into its basic parts, hydrogen and oxygen. The best part? Zero carbon emissions. It's a completely clean process.
But, and this is a big but, right now, green hydrogen is definitely more of a someday solution. For starters, it's about 3 to 4 times more expensive than the fuels we use now. The whole process is also pretty inefficient. You actually lose almost half the energy just converting it back and forth. And on top of all that, we just don't have the pipelines and storage tanks needed to handle it at a massive scale yet.
Okay, so we've got our three big players on the field: batteries, pumped hydro, and green hydrogen. Now let's try to put it all together and figure out what the best strategy for India really looks like.
This is really the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? After weighing all the pros and the cons, the costs and the challenges, what's the right path for a country with 1.4 billion people? Is there one magic solution that fixes everything?
So let's just recap, right? Batteries are our quick, flexible option, but they come with a high price tag and a heavy reliance on imports. Pumped hydro is our proven, cost-effective workhorse for bulk storage, but you can only build it in very specific places. And green hydrogen has incredible promise for industry, but for right now, it's just too expensive and inefficient.
And that right there brings us to the real answer. There is no single winner. For a country as vast and diverse as India, the only sensible solution is a strategic mix of all three. Just like any smart investment, we need a diversified portfolio of these technologies, with each one playing to its own unique strengths. And this is exactly what makes the decisions so incredibly tough. Because whatever we choose, it has to be affordable for the average Indian household. It has to respect our precious land and water. It's got to reduce, not increase, our dependence on foreign imports. And maybe most importantly, it has to be scalable to a size that works for our massive population. At the end of the day, it really all boils down to this. Energy storage is the bridge between a reliable power system and a sustainable future. It's not just some technical puzzle for engineers to solve. It is the essential bridge we have to build to get to that clean, reliable future for all of India.
So I'll just leave you with this thought. The next time you flip a switch late at night, long after the sun is set, just pause for a second. And maybe you'll wonder, is it a giant battery somewhere? Is it water rushing down a mountain? Or is it a molecule of hydrogen that's silently working to keep that fan spinning? The answer to that question is going to define India's energy future.